It's interesting to me what I've learned about the algorithm, thanks to some tech-minded people in my comments. I understand a little bit more about how it works now, and I'll just try and share this if I can.
Business owner, educator, and lifelong observer of politics and economics, making sense of complex issues.
Most people already know this, but for people who are like me and don't, the fact that the US data, the central thing on the reason for the law to ban foreign adversaries running a social media app, is that the data could go to that adversary's computers, and they could somehow use that servers, and they could use that. And now with the servers being in the US and US users, you guys, your data is not going to China anymore. My data is people in Australia, Japan, everywhere else in the world. They're all still going through the ByteDance servers in China, which I really don't get. Like, if I'm coming to you on here, how is that working? Anyway, so how is that working? This guy says to me, even though all the US data is on Oracle servers, because ByteDance still controls the flow, they can copy that and put that on their servers anyway. And that is the issue now. That is where the US government wants that further separation. So it wasn't ever about just the data. It was about that, the ability for them to access it. Either whether it's servers in the US or servers in China. The other thing is about the algorithm, and that the algorithm obviously is not one single entity, but the tech behind it is used for each region to make sure that whatever videos are copied on the network are sent to the right people and all that. And that's the IP, that's the thing that makes TikTok different. So, but apparently that's not even being used anymore as a algorithm, as the algorithm works in the rest of the world, that it is now. I said this is really tricky, that the data that goes into the algorithm is interpreted by the algorithm, and then it sends things out. But because the data is not going in, the algorithm can't determine things. So now there's a separate algorithm working for the US. I'm probably just made that worse for a lot of people. And there's probably a lot of people sitting there and he's going, oh, this guy, he's just got it all wrong. But basically, oh, this is the end of that. Basically, you guys are on your own anyway, as it is now anyway. There is no kind of what that law wanted, it pretty much got. And that even without selling off US TikTok, it is still a completely separate ecosystem. And that the only thing that is still out of place is that the app ownership in the app stores is ByteDance. And that's what the legislators, the policymakers don't want. They want that fixed up. And we'll see what happens there. Okay. Okay. Tango the Six. Okay, I will take some questions and comments because I'll share with you the fact that I don't have my cheat sheet today. Sometimes I have a cheat sheet up on a monitor, and I didn't make one today because I got hungry. I suddenly got hungry. And so instead of making a cheat sheet, I went into the kitchen and made myself an onigiri. And so now I don't have a cheat sheet. So I'm really winging it, but even more, I always am. It's a funny thing about cheat sheets. I noticed this when I was a student and I used to write the answers to things on my leg. We used to wear shorts at school. And I'd write answers under my shorts, and then during the test, I'd pull my shorts up to see the answer. The thing about that is, by the time you go through all that rigmarole, you've remembered it. And it's kind of like the cheat sheet as well. I go ahead and I make the cheat sheet and then I put it up on the monitor, and then I barely refer to it because I've actually now remembered it, because that whole process of making it helped me. Well, I don't have that today. So it could be interesting. We could be more all over the place than ever. So let me have a look at your comments, because some of these comments may be my cheat sheet. So the first question, how do you feel about Chicago? No idea. The Chicago School of Economics, Milton Friedman. I don't know. Did something happen in Chicago? Oh, you're referring to the ice. What's this? I'm from Australia. What's the stuff salt that you put in the trucks to put on the road? What are they called? Ice trucks? I thought that was really funny. Ice trucks. I don't know. Has that joke already been done? De-icing. Weren't the de-icing trucks spread on the internet as actual, what do you call the reserve in the US? National Guard going to Chicago? Is that what you're talking about? I don't know. You know, I don't know how I feel about, okay, it's performative. And actually that word is probably going to come up a few times today. It's performative. It doesn't mean anything. It's not democratic, that's for sure. But as a policy, as a maneuver, it's just performance. Because they can't do anything. They're not police. They're merely a presence. And that's performance. That's not fixing anything, right? Fixing things, oh, thank you, 86. Fixing things would be actually going into Chicago and taking all those things away from people so that they can't use them, you know? That would be a big part. So yeah, it's performative. Remind me to talk about visas later, but I'll talk about this other thing first while it's kind of fresh in my mind, because I've been listening to, as I make my onigiri, I've been very, very East Asia today. I've been making an onigiri and listening to Zhang Weiwei. So Professor Zhang Weiwei. So if you don't know who he is a, everyone knows who he is. He's the guy that talks about China fluently in English and has been in the presence of power in China for as long as I've been studying about Japan and Asia and China. Always there, prolific writer, totally devoted to the system. So don't take everything. If you go and listen to him later, please take it with a grain of salt. And which is what I'm going to sort of argue here today. So I've been listening to Zhang Weiwei talking about China as the emerging hegemon. And I have so many thoughts on this that are pretty random, but I'm going to try and go through them, hopefully systematically. But maybe I should do what I normally do and just get to the point first and then work my way back. Yeah, that might be better. China as a hegemonic leader is something I personally don't want, not because I don't think China is amazing. I most certainly do. I'm bullish on China. I have no doubt that China is going to emerge as the number one power in the world. Very few people doubt that these days. I don't doubt it either. My only problem with China emerging as a hegemon is that it's an authoritarian hegemon. And that is different to the US as hegemon, which the US, although there are criticisms, generally the US doesn't interfere with individuals in other areas. The US is, at least in the economy, is a more laissez-faire approach. And my concern about Chinese hegemon is it being very, use an economic term, micromanaging of our lives. That's the concern for me. I'm not concerned about the actual economics that they apply, because the economics that they apply is very, very good. And for all the critics of Chinese economics out there, that's what we used to do. What they are doing now, and I will quote Zhang Weiwei here, is China is not a socialist country. They have socialism, but their economy is a mixed economy. Those are his words. So, and they're also my words. We share that opinion. So we used to do this. What they're doing now is not socialism. What they're doing now, and I wish that they would say this more, and that's why I'm listening to him, because he says things like this, that their brand of economics is not socialist. Their growth, their fantastic growth that has pulled millions out of poverty, is not socialist economics. It's mixed economics. That's what did it. They didn't have that growth until they created those SEZs, the special economic zones, that existed parallel to the economic system of communism. So the SEZs are more socialist, the government is communist, the economic system is more socialist, but the SEZs are very much a mixed economy system, very, very much leaning towards socialism, far more than we ever did, but very much on that, much closer on that spectrum is how we grew from, and I would go back to the 20s, but let's say from the end of World War II to the 80s, that growth that we had, that was what they're doing now, similar. And they will, they're going to keep doing that, and they're going to emerge as the hegemon. My concern is that they will extend that further than just the economics, and they will start micromanaging our lives. And that is the concern for me. And that's why if you give me a choice of hegemons, I prefer the one we got than the one we're going to get. I hope I'm wrong. I hope things change. I don't think they will, because I get people in my comments from Singapore and China telling me, I had someone praising Lee Kuan Yew. Right. So if you don't know who Lee Kuan Yew is, he's the guy that really did a great job of turning Singapore from a mess into the greatest entrepreneur in history, one of the greatest tiny little economies in the world. He did that through authoritarianism. China's doing the same thing. We didn't do that. That's my point. We didn't do that after World War II. Japan didn't do that. Australia, US, Europe didn't do that. And yet, we got great economic growth. Now, China and Singapore did do that, and they got great economic growth. So the lesson from that is that you don't need to be an authoritarian regime to get great economic growth. However, because those two states, and believe me, they will converge into a commonwealth, they are claiming, and their citizens will claim, that to have what they have, to get your economic growth back, you need to have an authoritarian political situation to do that. And I totally disagree with that. Zhang Weiwei believes that the two-party system is our downfall. He's right that it's not good, but I think the political system was there between the 40s and the 80s, and we did get that economic growth, so therefore it can't be that is the problems that we're having now. I think the problems we're having now, as everybody knows, I'm going to say that one word that if you follow me, neoliberalism. And that is why we are where we are now compared to China. So what am I concerned about with China as hegemon? I like this example that I say. It's like you're free until, this is a future thing, right? This is let's say 20 years in the future. The dollar's got about 10 more years. Then let's say 20 years in the future, Chinese currency rules the world, and so forth. We're all citizens of this one world that has this hegemon there, and we all have all the benefits of being subjects of this hegemon. And we go to order dessert at a restaurant and an alarm beeps on your phone, and it's the central government telling you, I think you've had enough sugar today. If you have any more, you risk diabetes and being a drain on the system. Now, that's a funny kind of extreme example, but that's kind of what I mean by how, if we look at what happened in COVID, a lot of the criticism of Biden, a lot of criticism of China is that the state interfered too much in our health. In Japan, we didn't do that because we took action ourselves. So the government didn't need to come down on us. When the government said, everybody wear a mask, everybody was like, yeah, we already are. And the government said, okay, if you're going to do that, we're just going to close restaurants and bars. And everybody's like, yeah, we're already not going to them. And so everything else was open. Schools were open. Events were happening. We all had to take our temperature every morning and, fill in forms, and we got vaccines. Now, were the vaccines mandated? They were highly encouraged. I got mine. And we all went on with our lives. We couldn't believe what was happening in the rest of the world. So, this is the kind of thing that I fear. I don't fear the economics so much as I fear the overreach into our lives in the future. Okay. Oh, and Japan was completely closed. Oh, yeah, totally. But everywhere was. Like, the criticisms of Japan during that time are that Japan was completely closed. My grandfather in Australia lives like 6 miles over the border from one state in Australia to another state where my sister is. They couldn't visit each other for 3 years. They had to go through this whole thing. That's ridiculous. I was traveling all over Japan during that time, going to events. My daughter still had her races and everything. So, were we closed to outsiders? Yes, but so were you. And so was Australia, and Australia was closed to each other. Talking about dollar dominance. It actually says it on the bottom of the screen. Dollar dominance. Oh, that just reminded me. Jeffrey Sachs said to Zhang Weiwei, why don't we have the United Nations building in China? And I think that sums it up. That pretty much sums up where the world is going. And that just reminded me of another point. So if we say that the US is the leader of the world now and doesn't want to be, all right, fair enough. That's fair enough, right? Doesn't want to be, wants to step back from that role, okay? And that's fair enough. It's your taxpayer money that's funding all these things to great benefit to you, I would remind you. But also, if you don't want to do that anymore, you step back. And we create a multipolar world. And this is the buzzword of let's call them the elites. This is the buzzword of the elites, that we have this multipolar world. I don't get it. I really don't get it how, and maybe I'm so not smart that I can't see this, but my general view is that a multipolar world is a slow-moving vacuum, right? It only exists momentarily. It may be a long moment, but I don't think the US became the global leader because it tried. I think it became the global leader because after World War II, they were in the best condition to, run things. Now, if we say that you don't want to do that anymore, and we can have a multipolar world where power is dispersed between at least, not every country, but at least various regions more fairly. That sounds lovely. That sounds perfect. Idealistic. It can't stay that way. Because one power, the closest we had to, probably multipolarity was the Cold War, where at least there was, standing against the US was the Soviet Union. And then after that, we may have said that there is only a single hegemon. But to try and say that in this multipolar world, there'll be the US and China and Europe and South America, and everyone will have, a say, is fantastic. I would love that to happen. I just don't think it can happen. I don't think it can sustain itself for long. I think what will happen is, by default, a single entity will emerge as the dominant power. And the thing that makes me think this is people like Zhang Weiwei and everyone always say this same line, and it always reminds me of Hamlet. China doesn't want to take over the hegemonic mantle from the US. China doesn't want to be the leader of the world. The lady doth protest too much, right? Maybe you really believe that. Maybe you really think that you're not going to, you don't want to. I've heard Xi say it. I've heard many people say it. China doesn't want this. Don't worry. They don't want this. They don't want to be. Just like the US doesn't want it anymore. And everyone's like, yeah, that's great. US doesn't want it. China doesn't want it. More power for Europe, more power for South America. No. You're going to be not the only superpower, but you're going to be the dominant superpower by default. And you're going to, if everything's traded in your currency, you're the leader. It's not a multipolar world. If everyone is conducting their, look at everybody fawning over the president now. If you think those meetings where he has his cabinet, I don't know what you call it, sitting around and they all praise him, it's like watching, a 1970s film of North Korea or something. It's embarrassing. It's weird. All the world leaders are doing that. It's not just that cabinet. It's not just the CEO of Apple or Microsoft or Facebook that are doing it. The whole world is doing it. And why are they doing it? Because they need it. They need to be in that inner circle. They need to be where the power is. US is still the hegemon. So when China is the world leader, China's going to have influence. And it may be benevolent authoritarianism, but it's still authoritarianism. It's still telling you how to live your life. And that's what concerns me. To be a leader just like the rest of the world. Yeah, you want to be free. And that's my point. That's really good, Yorks. That's the point. I want to be free too. And I'm, like I said at the beginning of this, in case anyone missed it, I'm bullish on China, as is everyone, right? There's no doubt that, I'm seriously considering sending my daughter to China for university. That's how much I think this is a non-stop progression. Oh, remind me to talk about internet in Tibet. Anyway, so I think that, now I lost my train of thought. We don't want to be a leader just like the rest of the world. Thank you, Debbie Jane. We want to be free. Right, so I want to be free too, and I can see that under the US, as leader, I'm free. I'm having a great time, right? I think most of the peoples of the world, a lot of the people of the world can say that they are free and they are happy. My concern is that if that changes to something else, we may not be as free. Now, I don't want to, I'm thinking Joe Rogan here. Remember Joe Rogan talking about how if we were just healthier, if we just exercised and ate better and, we wouldn't need all these vaccines. We wouldn't need all these things. We would be stronger. Übermensch, right? And then I think about that as what would a benevolent authoritarian do for me? Now, I've got high blood pressure, and yet I still have about 10 coffees a day and then a drink in the evening. So if I was being monitored for my own health, how far would that benevolent authoritarian leader go in suppressing my freedom? Would it just tell me not to have another coffee? Or would it demand that I not have another coffee? It's trivial, but extrapolate that and you might, see what I mean. Oh, so internet in Tibet. So this is the other thing that gets me about people like Zhang Weiwei. They really talk about China. They really talk it up big. And they use things like this. You'll hear this. You can go to Tibet and they have the best Wi-Fi, the best internet access in the world, better than the center of Paris. Those are his words. You can go to Tibet and they will have better internet access in the mountains of Tibet, in the rural villages of Tibet, better access than you would in Paris. The first question is, access to what? Right? Access to what? The government internet. So that's one thing. But what about their healthcare? Right? Do they have universal healthcare? No. Do they still have limited access to healthcare? If they get access to healthcare, they're still out of pocket. They have to pay for it. So when we talk about the socialist economy providing all these things for the rural people, this is the way Zhang Weiwei described it. He said, we are a mixed economy that is dominating trade, and we are socialist because we provide internet access for poor rural villages, but not healthcare. My argument is you provide rural internet access to those people for control. You do that so that you're expanding your technological base, which is for your economy. So where is the concern for people there? It's not really a concern for people. It's very capitalistic, actually. It's very much an expression of how much you are now devoted to capitalist economics. Because if you really were socialist, you would have provided healthcare first. And that's also part of my argument to the States, is that, see, healthcare is not socialist. Universal healthcare is not socialist. A lot of socialist countries don't have it. Oh, thank you, BU2. That reminds me of something else. I'm never going to get to talk about visas today. So, Zhang, this should be the Zhang Weiwei live today. He was talking about how they've reclaimed desert. And this is true. And this has been going for decades. And this is going to lead into another rant. I hope you've got time. He says that the Chinese authoritarian regime advantage is that they can plan long term. And so the reclamation of desert, and well, it is reclamation, but it's also stopping desertification. But the reclamation of desert is a decades-long strategy in China. It's been going through the various, let's call them administrations, of China for decades, and it's reaping the rewards now. They are now producing grain crops in former near desert locations because they've been so successful in reclaiming that. That's great. His argument is that your country, my country, other countries can't do that because of the constant changing of administrations. My argument there is even bad governments can't help doing good things, because a government is, and there's a key word, is an administration. That is, they come in over the top of a superstructure that already exists. So government is massive, the administration is small. Government continues to do these things. It doesn't need to be that 4 years later, this guy's going to change this and then we're back at zero. That's not how it works. And I will use the argument again, the 1940s to the 1980s. And the depressing argument that from the 80s until now, both sides of government have supported neoliberal economics that have led to the situation we're in now. So it is possible to have elections, to be democratic, and still do really well and do really bad long-term things. It's not a sound argument that you need authoritarianism so that you can reclaim the desert. I don't know who you're talking about with the fragile ego, but if you're talking about who I look like right now, this filter makes me look orange. It's not a filter. I have no filter. It's just live. It's what it does. I don't think he has a fragile ego. I think he has a supremely confident ego. He absolutely has a fragile ego. Yeah, I mean, there's a thing about geniuses, right? I'm not talking about that person anymore. There's a thing about geniuses that they don't like challenges. So in education, when you have normal kids, they will try new things because they're used to failing. Like they're like, yeah, maybe I can't do this, but I'll give it a go. Geniuses don't like, as children, don't like to try new things because they've never failed. And they're always, it was this argument in education that we should stop praising kids too much, which is wrong. It's only the upper echelon, the upper level of intelligence that we need to be careful of our praise. So they don't like to try new things because they've always been told they got it right. And if they try something that they can look at it and go, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. No, thanks. I'm good. Rather than try it and fail. I think he's a bit like that. He's a bit like so confident and so, just confident. Let's just say confident. And when people don't say it, it's confusing for him. Like, you're so amazing. Yeah, I know. If they don't say it, it's like, what's wrong with this person? They're not giving me that praise that I'm used to. So I'm not saying he's a genius. It's privilege. Oh, yes, BU too. Thank you. Privilege. I would use that to describe a lot of people in power. Exactly. Exactly. Now I'm thinking of so many different people, but yeah, let's not get distracted. That's a good statement. Privileged and protected is exactly it. Okay, so let's just briefly talk, well, not briefly, because it's going to be a little bit long as well, shift gears to the visas, all right? Because I've been doing a lot of deep diving into this. And the first thing I'm going to talk about with regard to these visas is, and I'm not going to say the name here, the person that called in this, and you know who I mean. So the person that called this in, I saw an interview with that person, and this is what got me. They said, there are no unions there, and these people are being overworked, exploited, and working in dangerous and disgusting, I think she said the word, or something like that, conditions. I believe her. There are no unions there. This site is in Georgia, which is a right-to-work state, which means that you don't have compulsory unionism. I know a little bit about this because I was on the opposite side in my youth. I campaigned for voluntary unionism. I apologize. And I understand this. I was just rebelling against my father. It's what you do when you're, young. And she said that. I don't believe that was her true sentiment, but she said it, and that is the true facts. That is exactly what's happening. It doesn't mean you do what she did. What it means is that the system that she promotes, because she's on that side that is anti-union, needs to go back and start working on laws to fix that so that that doesn't happen. So I thought that was incredibly hypocritical for her to say that. I'm glad she said it, but incredibly hypocritical. But that was, she said, and I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but she literally said, there are no unions. These people are being overworked and underpaid. Those are her words. So I think that's a good step. I hope she takes that back to wherever she does her politicking and fixes that up, because this is the basis of it. Now, to talk about the visas. Right. So this is really interesting. People are very, very confused about visas, and I think some of the wording I put in my videos has also been confusing. So I'm going to try to sum it up in one sentence for those people who don't know how visas work. When you are on a tourist visa or any other like visa, ESTA, which is the system for travel authorization, electronic system that a lot of countries use now. Australia has it, Japan has it, US has it, Europe has it. You need to fill out something online, and then you get permission to go to that country. You then turn up at the border and you are given your visa, or what's called a stay. And that means, which is a visa. So the visa waiver program is not a waiver of your visa. You still get a visa or like thing at the border. What it only means is the visa waiver program means that you don't need to apply for one before you come to the country. So in the old days, I remember going to Vietnam in the 90s. I was in Japan. I had to send my passport to the Vietnamese consulate, embassy, they didn't have a consulate, embassy in Tokyo, for them to put in a stamp and post it back to me so that when I entered Vietnam, I had my visa. That is removed. That layer is removed. What happens is I can say, hey, I want to go to the States tomorrow. I wish I could. And I could turn up, and they look at me and they say, what are you doing here? I say, I'm going to hang out with my TikTok friends. And they're like, okay, you're going to get any money? I hope so. Right, no, you can't come in. Right, that's how that works. If I say I'm going to hang out with my TikTok friends and yeah, I won't be paid for it, that's fine. I can come in. The visa waiver program doesn't mean you have a right to enter the country. The visa waiver program doesn't mean you don't need a visa. You still have to get that guy. This is a thing people don't understand about border patrol, border protection, and customs. They have great authority. More authority than you might suspect. People seem to think that you can just rock up to a country and you have all these rights. No, you don't. They can look you up and down and go, no, you're not coming in. And then it's up to you to convince them why. And then they will take it to their supervisor, who then will evaluate whether you have the right to come in or not, and they can turn you away. Not arbitrarily, not because they just don't like the look of you, but, well, partly. And I will have an anecdotal story about that later. So when you turn up as a Korean worker, so I'm getting to the point here, you are in Korea and you work for LG or Hyundai. Those are the two main companies. Or maybe you work for Battery or whoever. You work for them in Korea. You go to work every day and they say, hey, we're building this plant in the States. There's no one there that can do the stuff like you can. We're going to send you over there. You're only going to go for a month or 2 months. Just go on a tourist visa. That is actually okay. They really should apply for an H1, I think it's called. but it is, you actually can go like that into the States and work at that plant as an installer, or at, showing people how to install it, or, you know, what's it called when you twist the dials and not levitate? What's the word? Somebody will put it in there for me. Oh, that's crazy. I can't remember that word. But you can do that. You can go over and work. That is acceptable under tourist visas. That's why people can go for, you know, I'm the head of the Australian Superannuation Fund. I can go over to New York for meetings and make deals and go back to Australia all on a tourist visa. Because I'm not earning my money. Tweak is not the technical word I was looking for, but, you know, tweak the dials and do all that. You're the expert. That's fine. You can do that on the tourist visa, on an ESTA, on a visa waiver program. So you can go to meetings, you can go to conferences, you can do presentations. You can't turn up and receive money for it. And you can't also receive money in your own country first for it. That's not a loophole. It's only if that work that you do in the other country, the States, is not adding value there to them and you as work. And the other caveat to that is, and this is the easiest way to understand it, simplest way to understand this whole visa rigmarole, is that you can't come to the States and displace an American worker. That's all that is. So if I come over there to do a presentation about the Japanese economy and Australia-Japan relations, I'm not displacing someone. I'm being called in as a authority on this. I'm sure there are other people that can do that, but at that conference, I'm not displacing an American worker. Now, if I'm just a regular gas fitter or programmer, and I go over there and work, that is against that, because there are people in the States that can do that. But if my company has developed a new program, nobody in the States can do that, I'm well within the permissions of that visa to go over there, teach other people how to do it, and to do it myself. So as long as I'm not displacing somebody else's chances, that's acceptable. So this is the story about the Koreans. A lot of the problem here was that because this is such a massive project, the main companies in Korea couldn't get their H-1 visas fast enough from the US. This was a US failure. This was, the government had organized this fantastic project, a massive project, a massive investment in the US. But when it came to actually going through with it, the company was, this is what I've heard, the companies in the Korea were trying to get all these H-1 visas, and the US just couldn't keep up with the demand. That's what I've heard. So they resorted to sending their staff over there on tourist visas, which is acceptable to a degree. There, it is a gray area, but it is acceptable if they've gone there for a short period of time and their expertise is needed. That really is almost acceptable. And that's why I think that the end of this story is that they were all sent back on planes, right? That they weren't detained, they weren't really deported, they were brought back. If you don't know about deportation, deportation means that you cannot come back. So you get a mark on your profile, on your passport, and when you go into a country, you will be marked as somebody that will possibly be denied entry or be looked at closer. So I don't think there was any of that. They were sent back, and then possibly there'll be some solution to this and they'll come back again. My question is, were they all necessary? Now, it is a massive project. There will be thousands of people there. But were the Korean companies just abusing the system or perhaps overreaching by sending everyone just because it was easier, right? That, oh, they all speak Korean, and even if they're just a carpenter or they're just a tech guy, they'll be able to communicate and we'll be able to get this stuff fitted faster. If we had to deal with American workers who are just as capable, there's going to be a language barrier. I would say, pull you. That's what you got to do. You can't get to send everybody over. If this is an investment in the US, then an investment in the US means that you employ US staff. And you unionize them and you make sure that they're being paid properly and that the conditions are good. And that is the cost of doing business. It's not, this is where I get upset about job creators. You don't get to be just a job creator. You get to be a job creator because society gave you money, gave you permission, gave you the conditions so that you could become that. So now you have to do the right thing back. For me, that's pretty much how it works. So I'm against what's happened. Let's just sort of recap this. I'm against people calling agencies to deal with what they believe is a bunch of foreign workers there. I'm against that. But I am for them making sure that those people are being looked after and they're working in the right conditions. I am for people having technical experts come over and train US people, train Americans to do that job. No problem there. But I am against just sending over bunches of workers that you can exploit and maybe pay lower wages than you would to comparable American workers just so you can save some money. You're already saving money because they get subsidies, they get tax breaks, they get land, they get infrastructure, and they get our custom. So in the end, we're already paying for the products that they're going to be making and selling back to us.
If you're still here, honestly, you have no idea how much it helps if you subscribe. I'll keep these coming.